how does the internet influence sexuality and gender? These studies found gender and internet use to be predictive of sexual attitude and behavior orientation of young adults. In addition, findings from previous studies show that frequency of internet use was significantly associated with practice of content of sexuality explicit. The few available studies suggest that the media do have an impact because the media keep sexual behavior on public and personal agendas. Media's portrayals reinforce and a relatively consistent set of sexual and relationship norms, and the media rarely depict sexual responsible models. Social media and other media can influence the decision that preteens and teenagers make about their health and lifestyle. For example, media message and content can make it look normal, cool, or grown up to eat junk food, smoke, vape, drink alcohol, and take drugs. Why it is important to understand gender and sexuality. Learn more about gender and sex and how we see ourselves as a boy, male, girl, female, transgender, intersex, or somewhere in between. Can help increase understanding and help youth establish their own gender identity.
Gender and sexuality online. Studies train you to examine gender relations and the construction of gender and sexual difference from a globally informed perspective and consideration on how gender and sexuality intersect with the social categories of race, class, ethnicity, disability, and age to produce our complex social identities, gender and sexuality online, according to Marwick. 2023. While the terms sex, gender, and sexuality are often thought of as synonymous, they are actually quite distinct. The differences between the common understandings of these terms and how researchers think about them yield case insights about the social functioning of gender. Sex is the biological state that corresponds to what we might call a man or a woman. This might seem to be a simple distinction, but the biology of sex is actually very complicated. While sex is often explained as biological, fixed, and immutable, it is actually socially constructed. West and Zimmerman, 1987. Gender, then, is the social understanding of how sex should be experienced and how sex manifests in behavior, personality, preferences, capabilities, and so forth. While sex and gender are presumed to be biologically connected, we can understand gender as a socio-culturally specific set of norms that are mapped onto a category of sex. Kessler and McKenna, 1978. Lorber, 1994. Gender is historical. It is produced. Lorber, 1994. Gender is historical. It is taught by families, schools, peer groups, and nation states. Goffman, 1977. It is reinforced through songs, sayings, admonitions, slang, Language, Fashion and Discourse, Cameron 1998. Cameron and Collect 2003, and it is deeply ingrained. Gender is a system of classification that values male gendered things more than female related things. The system plays out on the bodies of men and women, and it constructing hierarchies of everything from colors to academic to electronic gadgets and websites. Given this inequality, the universalized male body and experience is often constructed as average of normal, while female gendered experience or sexuality is an individual expression and understanding of desire, while like gender this is often viewed as binary, homosexual, or heterosexual. In reality, sexuality is often experienced as fluid.
Gender and sexuality are complex and multifaceted aspects of human identity and their expressions. And representation online can be equally diverse, and now the internet has created new space for people to explore and express their gender in ways that may not be possible safe in online settings. Online platforms have allowed for the information for communities based on shared identities and experience, providing a supportive environment for individuals who may feel isolated or marginalized in their office lives. Social media in particular has played significant role in facilitating the visibility and acceptance of LGBTQ. Individuals and their stories have provided a platform of activism and advocacy. However, the online world is not without its challenges and risks. Social media and other platforms can also facilitate harassment, discrimination, and hate speech towards individuals based on their gender sexuality. Online spaces can also reinforce harmful stereotypes and contribute to marginalization of certain groups. Furthermore, issues and around privacy and data security can be particularly significant for LGBTQ individuals who may face additional risk or discrimination or harm if their personal information is compromised or made public.
Gender identity can be a complex issue for youth learning more about gender and sex and how we see ourselves as a boy or girl, female or male, transgender, intersex, or somewhere in between can help increases understanding and help youth establish their own gender identity. These resources on sexual and gender diversity and gender identity and transgender issues are good place to start. This is the sexual attraction and or feelings of romance a person has for other person. Sexual orientation may include attraction to the same gender, homosexuality, a gender different than your own, heterosexuality, both men and women, bisexuality, all gender, pansexuality, or either asexuality. Sexuality is complex and involves many parts of who we are, our values and beliefs. our experience and relationships, and more. Sexuality is a term used to describe the way that people expresses themselves as a sexual being. Sexuality involves many aspects of being human. Some may find a virtual or picture of this idea that is stable for the children and youth, helpful to understand and explain how it fits together.
I will discuss gender and sexuality. Gender consists of two components: our internal sense of gender, our gender identity, and how we express our gender or present ourselves to the world, our gender expression presentation. Sexuality or sexual orientation is about who were sexual and romantically attracted to, whether that's people of opposite gender identity as usual, heterosexual, the same, gay or lesbian, or to people of more than one gender identity, bisexual, or no sexual attraction at all. Sexuality, gender diversity. On this website, we use gender diverse or transgender to mean that a person in their sense of gender identity and the sex they feel they belong to is different from their biological sex assigned at birth. For example, some people burn may identity as female. They may have a strong sense of this throughout early childhood or become aware during adolescence or later. There are many different ways that people describe themselves. People who identity as having no specific gender may use terms such as gender queer, gender natural, and gender fluid, or gender diverse, to indicate they feel they don't fit into traditional gender categories of male or female. Some communities such as Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people may use culturally specific terms such as sighter girl or brother boy. Gender diverse people may be gay, lesbian, bisexual, or heterosexual, may choose to identify as queer or describe their sexual identity in other terms. Thank you.
Gender and sexuality online. Why is it important to understand gender and sexuality? Learning more about gender and sex and how we see ourselves as a boy, male, girl, female, transgender, intersex, or somewhere in between can help increase understanding and help youth establish their own gender identity. Gender and sexuality are centrally important forces that shape every aspect of our lives. We know our bodies, minds, and selves through our gender and our sex. As a society, legal definitions and social expectations about women and men's sex and reproduction organize our medical, legal, educational, and political systems. Gender and sexuality online. According to Marwick 2013, while the term sex, gender, and sexuality are often thought of as synonymous, they are actually quite distinct. The difference between the common understandings of these terms and how researchers think about them yield key insights about the social functioning of gender. Gender is historical. It is produced by media and popular culture.
It is, it is taught by families, schools, peer groups, and nation states. It is reinforced through songs, sayings, admonition, slang, language, fashion, and discourse, and it is displayed ingrained.
Gender sexuality online. Gender is socially constructed and one is the innermost concept of themselves as a man, woman, and non-binary persons. People define their gender identity in a variety of deeply personal ways that can include a man or a woman, but can also extend to identities such as a gender fluid, gender non-conforming, and a variety of others. Sexuality refers to who a person is attracted to and can include a plethora of orientations, while being gay, heterosexual, and bisexual are perhaps the most well-known sexual orientations. There are many others such as sexual and pansexual. This article begins by defining gender identity and describing the differences between gender identity, gender expression, and sex. It then defines sexual orientations and discusses sexual fluidity. Finally, it details the impact of discrimination against gender, diverse and sexual minority, individuals and the factors that can help mediate the negative effects or stigma of prejudice. Genders and sexuality are often assumed to be related concepts, but in reality they are separate and distinct. Understanding the difference between gender versus sexuality is very important because while both are important parts of an individual's sense of self, if you don't know what each one is, you may make incorrect assumptions.
One can say that there are definitely connections between gender and sexuality. Gender and sexuality can combine to make a huge difference in people's lives. There are social influences around sexuality that influence us all. Expectation about women and men, boys and girls should behave, as well as how everyone will be either male or female, pervade society. And as a man or female, it is believed that one must act and behave completely heterosexual and stay in line with this socialized gender stereotypes. In heterosexuality and homosexuality depends on sex and gender as concepts. Gender typing and social stigmas around sexuality are two things that very prevalent in society today. Sociologists have argued that people learn gender roles and gender stereotypes through socialization. Gender role socialization often reinforces gender inequality because men and women are expected to fulfill the specific gender roles. We live in a society where there are only two perceived genders. Gender is implicated in homophobia more generally in fact discourse, especially in this paper. I will talk about connection between gender and sexuality. The article What It Means to Be Gendered Me by Bitsy Local examine how gender is structured and socialized in US. It has also examined the social construction of gender and the implication of gender. Gender is pervasive in our society with people constantly attributing gender to other people because it is what we are socialized to do. Bitsy Local provided an analysis of her experiences as a woman whose appearances often leads to gender misdistribution due to the fact that there are two and only two genders. These socialized gender types make it hard for people who don't. Male and labeled as deviate from the social norm as homosexual PAG discourse is less about sexuality and more about maintaining gender inequality. In the boundaries of masculinity, gender is implicated in FAG discourse in the way what the heteronormative nature dictates what makes and what doesn't make a fag. Attributed gender roles tell one how to behave appropriately. Gender roles and sexuality are always being constructed and reconstructed. We believe in a gender world in which there are both behavioral and appearance rules. We learn our gender identities as soon as we are born due to the fact that parents begins to gendering their children from their very first knowledge of such children. This seems to be normative conception of both femininity and masculinity. Gender's displays are simply read as evidence of one of the two categories.
Gender and sexuality studies trends. Gender and sexuality studies trends you to examine gender relations and the constructions of gender and sexual difference from a globally informed perspective and to consider how gender and sexuality interacts with the social categories of face, class, ethnicity, disability, and age to produce our complex social. Gender and sexuality are centrally important forces that shape every aspect of our lives. We know our bodies, minds, and selves through our gender and our sex as a society, legal definition and social experimentation about women and men sex and producing organs. Our medical, legal, educational, and political system. Sexuality is about your sexual feelings through attractions and behaviors towards other people. You can find other people physically, sexually, or emotionally attractive, and all those things are a part of your sexuality. Sexuality is diverse and personal, and it is an important part of you are.
Gender and sexuality are often assumed to be related concepts, but in reality, they are separate and distinct. Understanding the difference between gender versus sexuality is important because while both are important parts of individual's sense of self, if you don't know what each one is, you may make incorrect assumptions. What is the difference between gender and sexuality? Gender is socially constructed and one's innermost concept of themselves as a man, woman, and or non-binary person. By non-binary person, people define their gender identity in a variety of deeply personal ways that can be include man or woman, but can also extend to identities such as gender fluid, gender non-conforming, and variety of others. While sexuality refers to who a person is attracted to and can include a plethora of orientations, while being gay, heterosexual, and bisexual are perhaps the most well-known sexual orientations. There are many others such as asexual, pansexual. Sexuality is about your sexual feelings, thoughts, attractions, and behaviors towards other people. You can find other people physically, sexually, or emotionally attractive, and all those things are part of your sexuality. Sexuality is diverse and personal, and it is an important part of who you are.